Hi, Nathan here, founder of Embodied Excellence, certified high performance coach, and ambassador for your success. And this week we're talking about puzzles. Yeah, that's right. So about, I don't know, maybe a week ago, I bought a puzzle. It's a 1,500 piece puzzle, and been spending the last few days, not all day, but spending the last few days working on it, putting it together. And if you've been watching any of my other videos, you know that this stuff kind of gets me thinking about life and how they compare. And so I wanted to break this down for you. This is the 4 lessons I learned about problem solving from putting together a puzzle. And first and foremost, I think most of the things that we consider to be problems, they aren't actually problems. They're more like puzzles. I would say there are very few actual problems that most of us will encounter at any given time. So there are some, but in general, most of the situations we find ourselves in, you could probably classify it as it's really just a puzzle that needs to be solved. And so here are the 4 key elements to breaking this down. And so what is the first piece when you put together a puzzle? Well, the first thing is you dump all the pieces out of the box, and then you gotta put them all together, right? So you dump them all out, and what's that first step? Well, you wanna turn all the pieces over so you can get a sense of what they are. Right? Now, granted, depending on the size of the puzzle, it's just a sense, it's a flash. What you're doing is you're really taking inventory, to put it into more specific words, you're taking an inventory of what that problem situation is. You want to identify all those different pieces that are going to be important elements in finding a solution. So that's the first step, is turning everything over and taking that inventory, because you know what happens otherwise. Have you ever gone into a problem where you're looking for a solution and you didn't properly take that inventory, and it feels like you're just grabbing at straws, trying to find solutions because you didn't properly understand the full context of what was going on? So that's what this is about. It's about letting you understand that full context for what you're getting into and what are all the moving parts. What are all the pieces that you're going to have to be cognizant of as you move forward. So that's that first step, taking inventory. Step number 2, what do you do when you're putting together a puzzle? Well, if you're like me, you pull out all the edge pieces, because those are the easiest to identify, and that gives you a smaller proportion of pieces to fit together, to try and put together. So you create that border. And so really this is about creating structure. This gives you something that you can bounce off of when you're trying to find your solutions. It gives you that firm structure that you know that you can work on or work with, either if you're working through something with yourself or with other people, but it gives you that common ground, that understanding that this is what we're working off of. Okay, what's that third piece? That third thing that you do after you create that framework, you create that structure, well, you start to put all the different pieces into like colors. So you find your groupings or you find your themes, whatever you want to call it. But really what this is doing, this is just a way of chunking, right? So you're chunking down this mass of things into smaller, more manageable pieces. And this step is so important that I've found, because otherwise, again, it's sort of like grabbing at straws. You're just looking for things that maybe seemingly are related, but maybe they're not. So until you can really break that picture down and start to create those groups, it can feel chaotic. So you want to chunk the pieces down of whatever the problem or thing is that you're working on as you're working to find that solution. And so you want to, again, those like themes or colors in this case, are really going to help you bring in focal points. Okay, I'm focusing here. Now we're focusing here. Now we're focusing here. And so that's going to give you the ability to do that and then really understand, again, the range of how all these different pieces kind of work together, how they tie together. Okay, and that fourth and final piece when you're putting together a puzzle is, of course, once you have your buckets, once you have your chunks down, you start to put things together. You start to make those relationships. And I'm going to give you a word of advice here. What I've noticed can happen is sometimes you have so many pieces. Well, you try and put a piece together with another one. It looks like they go together, and you're trying, and they don't fit. Well, sometimes you have the right piece or you have the right solution, but you're just applying it the wrong way. So what this might look like in terms of a puzzle is you have that piece, but you need to flip it 90 degrees, or you need to flip it 180 degrees, and then it fits in. So don't discount your solutions so fast. You want to make sure you give yourself that permission when you're working with all these moving parts, that maybe you do have the right solution, but maybe you just need to reorient how you're applying it for it to actually be the right fit. And then here's the other thing, as you start to do this, as you may know, sometimes we can start to apply or try to go after a solution too quickly, or sometimes we'll see something and we don't quite recognize it for the power that it has in a previous moment. So an example of this in terms of the puzzle, and this happens all the time, is that have you ever noticed that when you are putting together a puzzle that you'll see a particular piece and for whatever reason maybe it catches your eye, but you don't quite know where it goes or what to do with it. And then a little later on down the road, like you put a little more of the puzzle together, and all of a sudden you see that piece and it's just like, oh, like you know exactly where it's supposed to go and how it's supposed to fit. Where before you didn't have that ability. So what I like to say about this is just that what progress does, progress gives us perspective. So as we begin to make more progress towards our solutions, all of a sudden we can see a bigger view of the picture. It's almost like drawing back from over top the puzzle and starting to look down on it. And you can see a little more perspective of what's going on and how those pieces maybe fit together. So the closer you start to get towards different solutions, remember to continue to re-inventory where you're at, re-inventory all those different pieces in those buckets, because you might suddenly understand how something fits together where previously you didn't. And again, that's just by getting that perspective from the progress that you've made. So those are the 4 steps that I have learned, thought about as I was putting, or have tried to put this puzzle together. It's not even close to done yet. So quick inventory of those is actually step number 1, taking inventory of what's going on, what your opportunity is, not your problem, but what your opportunity is. Take that inventory, understand all those moving parts. Step number 2 is create that foundation for yourself, create that border or that framework, the structure that you can bounce off of. It's going to give you something, a common thing that you can all, if there's more than one of you, that you can all hang on to and refer to. That 3rd step is segregating down into colors, all the different pieces. So find your themes, find your chunks, however you want to apply that to your situation. But you want to create chunks. You want to chunk things down into more manageable pieces for yourself that you can then work within that group. And then that final step, step number 4, is just doing the work, putting it together. And that requires diligence. You know, it does require work. It does require you to show up. It may require you to try many different possibilities or solutions. So just keep that in mind. And remember that sometimes you may have the right fit, but you need to work on how you're applying it. So those are the lessons for this week in terms of puzzle solving or problem solving, if you will. So I hope this video has served you. If so, I'd love to hear your comments down below. Like or share this video if you know someone who could hear this message, who it might serve them, or they might get a kick out of it. I really appreciate anything that you can share or like. So thank you all so much for watching, and until I see you next week, I want you to go out there every single day and be an extraordinary ambassador for humanity.